Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the August 18th meeting of the Welcome to the August 18th meeting of the Brentwood Rotary Club. My name is Drew Rogers. I'm excited to be here and proud to be serving as this club's president this year. We've got a great program for you, as Bert Bradford has done an amazing job lining up our program schedule. We're going to be started with our invocation by Becky Nunnally and then the pledge and four-way test led by Sheila Cleveland. Becky, if you want to come to the front.
Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we are indeed grateful for all the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us. We're grateful to be able to come together as a Rotary Club, and we pray that thou wilt help us in knowing what is needed in our community so that we can be of service to others, because we know that when we are in service to others, that we are in service to you. We pray that thou wilt bless the food that has been prepared for us, that it may nourish and strengthen our minds and our bodies, that we may be of further service to you. And we pray for those that are sick among us in our club, as well as their families, that if it be your will, that they can be made whole again. We do thank you again for all that we've been blessed with, and we humbly ask for these favors and blessings in the name of thy beloved Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
You please face the flag and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Follow me in the Rotary four-way test, the things we think, say, and do. First,
Is it the truth?
second,
Is it fair and concern?
third, fourth,
Beneficial to all concerned.
and fifth.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you, Sheila. We have Jennifer Bourne will be introducing our guests and visiting Rotarians. But before we do that, as you know, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. And so on this day, for all of you that are curious what happened 50 years ago today, Hank Aaron surpassed Stan Musial, his record for extra base hits at 1,378 extra base hits. Hank Aaron passed Stan Musial. That's what happened 50 years ago today. Jennifer, go ahead. Guests and visiting Rotarians.
All right. We have a couple guests today. I want to recognize first our two people who are still in the process of membership. Owen, right here. So if you've not met him yet, please go meet him. And Bob. Where's Bob at? There you are. Bob as well. So if you guys have a chance, please go meet them before we leave today. And we do have one guest, George. I'm going to let you introduce George.
Order Jennifer, and I'll let her tell you about.
I'm Jen Barrett. I work for SAP Cloud, software company, as a customer adoption consultant.
Thanks for bringing your daughter here with us.
Wonderful. Jennifer, thank you for being here. Owen, we're glad that you are continuing to progress through the membership proposal process. Bob, know that you had orientation today, so we're looking forward to welcoming you. And we have some announcements that need to be made. And I'm going to start with Paul Harris Fellows because we have several that I want to recognize, some of whom we tried to recognize before and were unable to, but we're going to get to do that today. I saw John Morse arrive, and so I'll start with John. John, Paul Harris Fellow +7. John? Larry Faust, where are you? There he is. Okay, I knew I saw you come in here. We have a Paul Harris Fellow certificate and pen for your daughter-in-law, Jocelyn Faust. So I'd like to present that to you. So maybe you can present it to Jocelyn. 4 of 6, mother of 4 of 6 grandkids. That's a big job. Kip Dodson, Paul Harris Fellow +3. Kip. Last but certainly not least, we have Marie Swinford, Paul Harris Fellow +1. Marie. Wonderful. That's a great way to get started. And I also have another announcement that I want to make because I see Charles Grumman is here. Okay, I didn't prepare you for this, so this is going to be exciting. Charles is going to Columbia, not Tennessee. He's going to the country of Columbia. And so what we learned at the board meeting is that there are members that may not know that we do this, but when we travel internationally, Charles indicated that he was interested in visiting a Rotary Club in Columbia and learning what they do in Columbia or what needs there might exist there, where we could potentially enter into a partnership and learn how we can engage in more international service. And what he was unaware of is that we typically pass banners. So we said, Charles, get a banner while you're at the club that you visit in Columbia. And he said, that's great. Do we have a banner to give? Actually do. So I would like to present Charles with a banner for his adventure down south of the equator. So there you go. See if I come back. I'll bring one back. Godspeed, Charles. Yes, bring one back, and we'll keep it. So thank you. Okay, so I have a couple of announcements before I get to Larry Kane. Some of you may have noticed or may not have noticed that we have not yet generated first quarter invoices. They haven't gone out yet, but it's time for those to go out. The reason that those have not yet gone out is because as a board and as that treasurer position is transitioned, we've had to closely review our budget. And there are a couple of things that we have to consider. One is increased operating expenses, but also the changing composition of our club, which now skews more towards Rule of 85 membership. We have a number of Rule of 85 members. As we went through that budgeting process, the board had to reconcile how we cover our fixed operating expenses outside of what our meals cost with less dues income because of the way that the Rule of 85 membership is assessed dues. So based on those discussions in a subsequent meeting that was held with the past presidents, I needed to announce the following changes to the dues structure of the club. And I want you to know that I am available after the meeting today to discuss this if you should have any questions. There will be an increase in regular dues for regular members from $275 a quarter to $300 a quarter. That will be effective immediately. That will not apply to new members for the first 2 quarters. So there is a grandfather period. And then as a result of the changes that we're making to the dues structure, we will also create 2 classes of Rule of 85 member. The default option, if you're currently a Rule of 85 member, will be to change to dues of $175 per quarter. That will include your Rotary International and district dues, but it will also include meals at half of the club meetings. So it will include half of the meals if you should attend every meeting. The second option, which is similar to the current dues structure for Rule of 85, is that you would pay your Rotary International and district dues in the first quarter of each Rotary year. So that would be in July. And then you would pay $100 per quarter thereafter plus meals anytime that you attended a meeting, and that would be tracked and invoiced by Donna. Under no circumstance would your dues be more than regular member dues, but you could pay more than the other category of Rule of 85. So that's something that you need to consider. And I don't expect you to be noting all of this. I will include this in reflections so that you can read it and see it for yourself. But you will need to declare with Donna and the treasurer which class of Rule of 85 membership you would like to participate in. Any changes that you make would have to occur once a year. So if you decide that you want to change that category of Rule of 85, then you would need to do that once a year. Again, it'll be summarized in this week, but given the sensitive nature of this communication, I wanted to make sure that you heard it from me and that I shared it from the podium. And again, I'm available after the meeting to discuss if you should have any questions. Lastly, housekeeping item, if you need to have any meetings at the Martin Center, here before or after our regularly scheduled meeting, please let me know. I've been working with the Martin Center on that, and there's some specific spaces that I think they would prefer us to use when it comes to having meetings, either before or after our meeting. So come talk to me. With that, Larry Kane, turn it to you.
No hat, but 15 members are sitting here today who did not RSVP, i.e. our new table in the middle back there, special table for Charles and Patrick. So please RSVP. It isn't that hard. It's been a long time since we had to say anything about this, but we're good on food, thank goodness. But you see what happens when you don't RSVP. It is not that hard. If you need a remedial course on how to RSVP, it's 3 dots on the computer, 3 hits of the key, 1, 2, 3, and you're done. Thank you. Golf tournament. Here we go. So we're going to have a great golf tournament 24 days from today. We're going to have 128 players out there having a great time, eating a good lunch, getting nice prizes, and enjoying their day. We're going to have, Susie hadn't given me the number, but we're going to have 30-ish members out there working that day, different hours. And that's wonderful. Good to see y'all out there doing the jobs we need to get done. And that you've done a great job every year. And Susie does a great job putting that together. Our golf tournament is going to be neat. I mean, it's going to be a great fun event for the players, and it's going to be fun for our volunteers to be out there. Our golf tournament needs your money. Pure and simple. Same list I hold up every week. Now it's better this week. We're down to 6 members who have not bought their own hole sponsor yet. It was 9 or something, or 10 or something last week, but we're down to 6 now. So that's good. We've got 35 sponsors outstanding that we had last year that are not on the list this year yet. So you can do the math on that, $350 each. That gets us real close to where we are. We're in pretty good shape right now. I'd say we're at, maybe if I stretch it, 90% of where we need to be, but this will get us over the hump. And we'll just get out and get our own stuff. So let's make that happen. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks here, so you won't hear from me, thank goodness. But you know what you need to do. You know who you are if you haven't bought your own hole sponsor. So buy your own hole sponsor this year, please. And we'll have another great tournament. We'll have another great turnout, and we'll have another great income year for our BRCCL. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And before we get started to our program, I'm going to ask Jared Tanksley to lead us in Happy Bucks. Jared.
Who's happy? Beautiful day. This is the greenest August I've ever seen.
Hey, everybody. Following up on a little bit of what Larry said, I'm really happy that in the next few weeks, we have 2 wonderful opportunities for community and fellowship. We've got our golf tournament on September 11th, and that same week on September 14th, we've got our annual First Responders Picnic. So excited about that. Looking forward to seeing all of you at both of those.
Thank you.
Dale Llewellyn and I had the pleasure of doing the orientation for Bob Thompson right here, and learned a lot about Bob, but you guys would love to visit with him. He spent some time in a submarine years ago, which for a guy like me, I don't know how he did it. So anyway, enjoy that. And the other thing I wanted to say was that I hope Alan doesn't remember that. I don't know if I was the one that asked you not to come the last time or what all happened, but I'm looking forward to hearing you talk today. Okay. So thank you very much.
Well, Charles,
All right, Larry. So now I have the microphone. I'm sorry about not RSVP. I wanted to say that, let's see. So we got to brag on the kids. I got a little girl who's in 6th grade. She's on the cheerleading team. So now I'm one of those parents on the sidelines, like, you know, every Tuesday for JV middle school, like big time football here, JV middle school. But it's so much fun to be part of that crowd. And then I wanted to say that I'm grateful because I have a strong feeling that in the next 1 minute, our fearless leader, Drew, is going to promise to not make any more baseball references with the 50-year thing. So I'm quite confident he knows that more happened 50 years ago than baseball. Is he even a baseball fan? Are you even a
Yes, I
baseball?
am.
Oh, he is. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's fine. Still, I predict that's the last one. Thank you, Drew.
It's
Charles,
not.
What else we got? Miss anybody on this side? Very little. By the way, you see some football schedules on the tables. That's only a few I brought. I will have for next week.
Just reflecting on the fact that Middle Tennessee has become such a huge sports area. We got Northsville Little League playing at 2 o'clock today in the Little League World Series, the first Little League team to ever make it to the Little League World Series 3 years in a row. And tomorrow night, here in Nashville, our fairly new soccer club is going to play for the League Cup. And probably the greatest or most popular athlete, but maybe the greatest athlete in the world right now, Lionel Messi, even though he's going to be playing for the wrong team, will be in our stadium. So just reflecting on from what we had sports wise when I was a kid to now, it's pretty amazing. So.
You ready? Anyone else?
Anyone else? Wonderful. Thank you, Jared. As Jared mentioned, we've got football schedules on the table. So that kind of gives you an indication of where we are in the year. But next week, make sure that you wear your college colors because we have a special program that will be about college football. But let's turn to this week's program and have Bert Bradford come and introduce our speaker, Alan Walker. Bert.
Good day, everybody. I was going to have Keely Hall introduce our speaker, but he asked for me not to let him speak because he knows too much stuff about him that he's afraid would get out. So today our speaker is Alan Walker, and he's the managing partner of Dale Carnegie of Tennessee, Georgia, and even in Florida, Orlando. His leadership has resulted in multiple years of revenue and profit growth. His organization was recognized as a top 10 market penetration for Dale Carnegie Global in 2016. They were recognized as a top 3 cumulative annual growth rate in 2017. His organization has also been a finalist multiple times by the Better Business Bureau's Torch Awards for Ethical Commerce in Nashville. Alan is a senior trainer with Dale Carnegie, working for them for 20 plus years and working subjects such as winning sales, executive presence, experience innovation, employee engagement, motivating leadership, world-class customer service, high-impact presentations, and sustaining growth. He has spoken to over 150 plus organizations and coached thousands of professionals. He is a graduate of Harding University. He's a former district trainer in Rotary District 6760 and a Paul Harris Fellow. Alan currently lives in Murfreesboro with his wife and his youngest daughter, who I believe just went off to college. And he enjoys reading, hiking, Predators hockey. So if you'll welcome Alan Walker.
Well, absolute pleasure to be here today. And it's kind of a culminating moment for me in this way. Rod was correct. I was invited to come speak a few years back to the Brentwood Rotary Club. And it was about the week before I was supposed to come speak. And I got a call from individual coordinating the speakers. And he said, Alan, I'm so sorry. We had another speaker come up and we're going to ask you not to come speak. Which I tried not to take too much offense at. I mean, I'm just this leadership guy, but still, you know. And I said, well, you know, who's coming by? And they said, well, U.S. Senator Lamar Alexander asked if he could speak at the club. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. I want to come hear him too. So, you know, I have been in charge of programs up at the downtown club before, and, you know, U.S. Senator, leadership guy, I know where I would have gone to for that. But, you know, so when Bert gave me a call earlier this week, I was like, oh, great. Like, who's coming now? You know, I was just like, But he was just calling to check up. He's like, hey, you good to go? And I was like, yeah. And then I thought, oh, wow, I'm actually going to speak. So I quickly had to do what I think about half my team is I had to go to ChatGPT and say, could you write a speech for me? Dale Carnegie person speaking to the Rotary Club of Brentwood. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen of the Brentwood Rotary Club, I'm truly delighted to be here today as a Dale Carnegie trainer, discussing the incredible synergy between Dale Carnegie principles and the impactful projects taken by this esteemed club. Okay, it's actually not that great, but it is interesting how the world continues to evolve and to change. And one of the things I get excited about is really talking about how we interact today in this world. So Dale Carnegie has been in business for 110 years as an organization. Dale Carnegie started his courses in New York City back in 1912. And yet today we find our business is growing, it's impactful because of the needs that are out there in organizations. And so I want to have an opportunity to chat with you a little bit about that. It's good being down here. I see people that I know, Keely, who we've been great friends for 20 years. Our daughters grew up together. Dick, who was district governor when I was real involved as a district trainer as well. It's good to be here. And yes, I do have tickets tomorrow night for Nashville SC. I did opt in as a season ticket holder, so I paid $80 for mine. I looked on StubHub and Ticketmaster, and my seats are going for $900. I made the mistake of mentioning that to my wife, who just dropped our daughter off at school. And she was like, that sounds like a semester full of books right there. And I was like, I'm not going to miss it. I can't, if I didn't sell my Stanley Cup tickets in 2017, I'm not selling these tickets. So as I was thinking about today, I took a look through every year, Gallup puts out what they call a State of American Workforce Survey. And they've been doing this for years. You can go back and look at the different ones. And the 2023 version came out. And there were just a few things about it that were somewhat startling to me when I was looking at it. Now, Gallup has been in this space for a long time, right? We know the name. And they're asking people about various things that are happening in their workplaces. So one of the things that they asked people around was around quiet quitting. If you've been reading any business press, there are articles in the Wall Street Journal and so forth, as to people who are quiet quitting their jobs. They're working for us, but they're not really. And based on their survey techniques, they were looking at State of the American Workforce US data, 52% of people fell within that quiet quitting category. Wow. And it continued to ask questions like, for instance, questions regarding how much are our people thriving at work? And when they looked through the data and in the report, they mentioned that only 31% of our employees are thriving at work. And it just broke my heart, because I'm thinking, we spend so much time at work, and only a third are actually thriving, in that role. And then you go a little deeper into the survey, and they asked about emotions that people feel. And one of them had to do with stress. Did you experience a significant amount of stress yesterday? And the survey came back that 52% of people in the US, #1 in the world, had a significant amount of stress yesterday at work. And then one that, again, just kind of hit home for me as well was, not just did you experience stress yesterday, but were you angry yesterday at work? Were you angry? Now, this was one that the US was not top in the world. There were other regions that were above us on this particular statistic, but still it came back 18% of American workforce angry yesterday at work. And it just made me think that as leaders of organizations, we've got a lot to do. We have people who we're taking care of that are part of our organization. And if you're like me, you want that organization to be a place where people thrive, a place where people can use their unique gifts that they have, and a place that they enjoy. And so what can we do, right, as leaders to do that? And so I thought of, as we were going through this, I thought of kind of 5 areas that I find myself talking a lot about with organizations. And when I coach executives, we tend to talk about these 5 different things. And so I thought in the next 20 minutes or so, I would just walk through those five areas for you. The first one that I wanted to focus on is just being present. Leaders being present. I think it's been interesting since COVID, the hybrid nature, work from anywhere. I get really used to the screen in the spare bedroom, that my daughter's room that she used to be in, that I took over as my office. And I'm not really in the space with my employees as much as I used to. And although screens are great, and we do a lot of online training and things of that nature, I think there's something different, as I like to say, when you're in the room where you can smell each other. There's just something different when you can smell each other than being across a screen with somebody else. Plus the fact that we're so distracted of things that are happening on our screens, or even when we're at work, we're distracted. There was a book that came out this year called Stolen Focus. And he's going through 10 different factors that really take our focus away from us, just as humans, really. But it was a leadership focus area. And so he was talking about how many times a leader is interrupted today. Now, his number was 300 to 400 times a day. Some of you might think that's really high. Some of you might think that's low. When you think about emails and conversations and Slack messages and instant messages and just our own checking of social media and Facebook and things of that nature. And the problem is that our brains are actually wired to find something new or different. So it gives us a little bit of a dopamine hit when we are interrupted. So it just creates this chaos in our lives as leaders. He had an interesting study that he mentioned in the book. I thought, I just giggled when I read it. They were doing a study of people who were multitasking. In other words, they're focused, right? Are they focused where they are? Are they where they are? And then they gauged IQ factors. And what they found was that when we find ourselves being distracted and interrupted, our IQ drops by 10 points when that happens. Now, before you get excited about that, when you smoke weed, it drops by 5 points. So it'd be better to be stoned than distracted at work. That's not a recommendation from Dale Carnegie. I'm just saying that's how much it impacts us when we're distracted. We're distracted at work. And so the ability to be present, and sometimes it's just where we're focused. I'm young enough to where I was growing up when, video gaming was coming out, and I have a little bit of, Gen X vibe in terms of video gaming. And I remember it was just a few years back, I was sitting there at a vacation house with a family, and I was there with my two nephews who were 10 and 13 and my son-in-law, 25. And we're playing Mario Kart, right? And it'd been a bit since I played Mario Kart, but I was crushing it. I was smoking them. I mean, I was in first place. I was really bringing the Gen X to the table, I thought. And then that dreaded thing happened. My son-in-law, Isaiah, he goes, Mr. Walker, he still called me Mr. Walker back then. He said, Mr. Walker, he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm crushing you. That's what I'm doing. He's like, where are you looking? And I was looking at the top left, which was in first place. Turns out that was him. I was actually on the top. I was on the bottom left, and my cart was literally bouncing up against the wall. I just had to laugh. I mean, I just had to laugh at myself when that happened, because that happens to us in work as well. And like, we're focused one way, but there's other things that are happening. And this idea of wherever we are, we have to be there. And so as leaders, really thinking about that presence of mind, removing those distractions, and wherever we are to be there, because there's so much that we pick up on just through our human interactions that as leaders we miss when all these other things are distracting us within our world. And so one area that I think can really make a big difference is just our focus. It again reminded me of another story. We had the opportunity to, as a family, go to Disney World over the holidays. First time I'd ever gone during the holidays. And it was a great time. Went to the little Christmas party, which, you pay even more money to get there with relatively fewer people, which is great. But we were sitting there. It was a hot day at the Magic Kingdom, and we were waiting to go into the Jungle Skipper restaurant. It's a great restaurant. We're waiting, and people are cruising back and forth in Adventureland. And we had noticed that somebody had lost their Dole Whip on the ground. If you're familiar with Disney World, the Dole Whip is like it's like a big thing. It's just an iced, creamy cone, like an ice cream, like a soft serve, and it was melting on the ground. So we're sitting there waiting, and there was a dad that was coming off. He had like a 7-year-old in one hand and a 4-year-old boy in the other. And he was walking along. He was clearly trying to figure out what was going on. And he was walking along. The 4-year-old was more in the moment, right? And he looks down and he sees this, sweet, cold whip lick, little Dole Whip on the ground. And so he did what any other 4-year-old would do, is he just reached down on the asphalt and just lit that thing up. Took a big smile on his face. Dad never saw it. Just kept dragging the kids along. And whereas the family were like, and just bust out laughing. It was just so funny. It's just so funny because again, that distraction and focus with where we are. And so my challenge for you would just simply be, when we think about presence, is just think today, like for the rest of today. I know it's Friday afternoon, but where are you? And are you where you are? Are we where we are? And as leaders, the more we're able to do that, see what kind of difference that might make in terms of our people, because then we can actually see what's happening. The second thing that I focus on quite a bit with leaders is just that topic that's been around for a while. Gallup actually started it, which is employee engagement. Like, how engaged are employees? Since COVID in 2020, employee engagement nationally in the US has gone down by about 4 points. It actually had been rising up until 2020, and then it started to come back again, maybe for obvious reasons, but disengagement continued to rise through that as well. Because again, with the work environment, the one thing that people want to feel, not anger, but being valued, by the organization. So am I valued? This study I was mentioning, the State of the American Workforce, they were asking about work location as it relates to thriving at work. And interestingly, they said where you work had no impact on whether or not you were thriving. Work location didn't matter statistically. What mattered was engagement. If you were engaged, you were 3.8 times more likely to be thriving at work. So engagement had a greater impact than location. And so a lot of times companies say, well, should my people be home or should they be in the office? And I mean, that answer is very specific to organizations and what you need to be doing. And when you think about people thriving, it really doesn't matter whether they're here or whether they're there. It matters, are they engaged, right, in the process? And so in Dale Carnegie research, we're taking a look at what are some of those, what we call drivers of engagement. Number one driver by far, by every other research organization that's looked at it, is your relationship with your direct supervisor, by far. So 2 to 3 times more likely to be engaged if I have a good, positive relationship with my supervisor, 2 to 3 times. The other is true as well. I'm 2 to 3 times more likely to be disengaged if I don't have a great relationship with my supervisor. So we've all heard the phrase, people don't leave companies, they leave bosses. Well, statistically and research-based, that's absolutely true. And so what kind of relationship do I have with my people? Now, Dale Carnegie has been a relational organization for a long, long time. Dale Carnegie wrote the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is all about those relationships. But when you look at that book, there's 30 principles, half of which have the phrase, the other person in them. Be genuinely interested in the other person. Talk in terms of the other person's interest. In other words, one of the keys long ago that Dale Carnegie talked about to engagement is just to be focused on the person, the other person, and to do it, he says, again and again, sincerely. And I think that's where the heart comes. I like a phrase that Dale Carnegie says. He says, flattery is from the teeth out, appreciation is from the heart out. And people can tell a difference. And so when we appreciate our people, it makes a big difference. And so in addition to that, it's the belief in senior leadership is the second driver. So you have relationship with supervisor, belief in senior leadership. Are we headed in the right direction? Are they making decisions they're thinking about the people when they're making those decisions as organization? Do we feel confident in the direction of the company? And then the third one was pride in the organization. The way I like to say it is when someone says, where do you work? Do you say the name of your organization or do you say the industry that you're in? Do my people say, I work for Dale Carnegie? Or do they say, I work for a corporate global training organization? It's indicated. Like, how much pride do you have in the company that you work for? We do a lot of work with Tennessee Valley Authority, and what a wonderful organization and the service they have to the Valley. But man, that's one that they nail, pride and service to the Valley. They're laser focused on that. Think about purpose of the organization. That's so critical. And so when you think about belief in senior and employee engagement, I was thinking about Dave Walton, who is the CEO of Cat Financial. Some of you may know him. He's a fantastic person, also a Nashville SC season ticket holder. I see him down there too. Sorry, you may not. You've got the shirt on, so I'm talking to you about it. I'm excited too about tomorrow night. I had the opportunity with Cat Financial to do different leadership summits with them around the world, and I found myself in 2019 down in Santiago, Chile. That's their Latin America division headquarters, and so I'd gone down there to do a presentation in their leadership summit. And I'd never been to Chile before. I was real excited about that, and I show up a day early just to kind of look around. And when I show up, I realized that the day before, the whole country erupted. Now, if you remember the fall of 2019, you probably don't keep up on Latin America politics, but that's when the whole chaos started in terms of Santiago. There were firebombing bus stations. There was rioting in the streets, a couple 100,000 people downtown, upset. And so you imagine now we're in this environment where they're holding a meeting, everybody's flying in, and this is what's happening. Now, where we were wasn't there. And to be fair, I'll say on behalf of the Chilean people, when it was happening, they were super nice to me. I remember there was one moment where I'd gone down that day when we were still trying to figure it out. And I sat down at a restaurant. The restaurant was empty. I didn't think about why, but it was empty. And the owner was really helpful. And I went to leave and the owner goes, no, you don't go that way. You go this way. I was like, I thought he was giving me directions to the bus. And I was like, no, the bus is that way. And he's like, you don't go that way. You go this way. And so I looked around the corner and people were throwing rocks at policemen and, you go that way. And they were just really helpful getting me out of that space, which I was really thankful for. Well, as that progressed, Dave Walton was looking at, the security and the things that were happening, and they made the decision to cancel the meeting, which I think anybody in the room would have made that decision. Cancel the meeting. We're leaving. We're getting out of there. We'll redo it. It's more important. Now, what really stood out to me was not that he canceled the meeting, but we were sitting there in the hotel and everybody was getting ready to go. And Dave specifically came to me. I'm just a vendor, right? That's working for Cat Financial, little leadership guy speaking at the conference. And he said, do you have your flight out? And I said, yeah, I've got my flight rescheduled for tomorrow. I was going to leave later in the week, but I got my flight scheduled for tomorrow. And he goes, no, that's not good enough. And so he got people at CAT involved and they got on American Airlines and I flew out with them, like with their leadership team that afternoon. I've never forgotten that because for Dave, there were things that were more important than just the business. Like anybody there was under that was part of his family, right? That's how he views them. That's what he does. And so you might imagine their employee engagement's pretty high because as a senior leader, he just doesn't see it as these are people that are doing things, but these are people and they matter. And that's how he reacts and works in the organization. So employee engagement becomes the second thing that becomes really critical that we talk a lot with organizations about. The third one is this whole thing with, and I kind of joked a little bit about ChatGPT, but this whole thing in reference to like artificial intelligence. I'm sorry, I was trying to make a really nice gesture for the social media posts. I appreciate that. Keely, if you'd also like catch me in a couple of good spots, I'll post that as well and tag the club. No, seriously. Okay. Anyway, I did not know anything about ChatGPT until January or February of this year. And I was down at Harding University is where my daughter goes and her very, very serious boyfriend, who's now her fiance based on some summer engagement. He was sitting there talking to me about it. I could not get the letters right for the longest time. Again, kind of an old man moment. Chat GPT. No, they talk louder when they get it, anyway. But, he was going through, and of course, for him, he's a computer science major, and the professor had made the mistake of at the opening of the class that semester saying, I don't want anybody using Chat GPT to write your code, which means 90% of the students after that class Googled Chat GPT and started writing code with Chat GPT. But a lot of companies are thinking like, what and how is this technology going to impact? And so you see those little taglines that say powered by Amazon Web Services or powered by this or that AI. Well, we started a tagline just powered by people. Because what we realize is no matter what the technology change is, what really makes a difference in an organization is the people side of it. I was having a conversation yesterday with a younger person that works for me, and he was like, man, with all this AI, I can just see like we're going to be working less and we're not going to have as much to do. And I said, Adam, do you have one of these? Like, yeah. And I said, has this made work less or has it made work more? Like, is this less jobs or more jobs? It's like any piece of technology, just as humans, we use that to continue to drive innovation and to drive opportunities. But the question isn't, in general, the question becomes very specific for a person. So one of the Harvard Business Review, this last article, this last edition, August edition, it has several articles about AI. And basically what they're saying is that the organizational leadership responsibility to help people train up, migrate, understand how to use that technology so that they can do human things. And that's really the way I like to think about it. Let the computers do computer things. Let the humans do human things. Earlier this week, I was out at Middle Tennessee State University. It was about 10 years ago. They did a survey in Middle Tennessee of all the businesses in Middle Tennessee, and they were trying to gauge their graduates. About 2/3 of the School of Business graduates stay in Middle Tennessee from MTSU. And they asked them what was missing. And the number one thing that came back for the MTSU graduates were soft skills. I don't think that's indicative of MTSU. I just think in general, soft skills is something that's continually hard for people. And so Jones College of Business reached out to us. We formed a partnership 8 years ago to have students participate in our Human Relations and Communication course, our Dale Carnegie course. Every Jones College graduate participates in that course. They graduate from it. So we've had 5,500 go through over the last 8 years. But I had a chance to talk to a few of them on this week when I was down there. And they were talking about, like one, for instance, was talking about how his name was Luke, and he'd just come back from a semester abroad, and how the tools of just being good with people impacted his semester abroad experience and his ability to interact and understand and get to know cultures and get to connect with people. There was another who was telling me about in the interview process, because of that Powered by People, the importance of it. He was saying that he was going for an internship with a company, and they gave him a call back. This was last semester. They gave him a call back and they said, "We're so sorry. Our internship spots are full. We can't offer you an internship." And he was like, I was really kind of, I was down about that. I needed an internship. And they said, "We're so impressed with how you interacted with us. We'd just rather offer you a job," which he was pretty excited about, right? He was pretty excited about that because of the importance that organizations place on that powered by people. And so, Dale Carnegie, this is something that we often think about, is how do we connect with others? And so there's a tool that we talk about in our leadership called Inner View. It's not an interview like I'm hiring you, but I'm seeing inside the person, Inner View. And it's a specific questioning process. And what leaders can find out is, what are those unique abilities of the people that work with me? What are their passions? I've heard it said that everyone's motivated. It's just by what? Right? You can't motivate anybody, but everybody is motivated. And part of that Powered by People is finding out what powers our people. What gets them up in the morning? What gets their focus? Where are they going to be able to flourish? And I think that's where AI becomes a tremendous opportunity for us, because it allows us then to connect that unique ability people have with what they can do, and technology can do the rest of it. So Powered by People becomes really, really critical. There's a formula that we use within our training. We call it EC plus BC equals PC. Emotional change plus behavior change equals performance change. So if I want a performance change of my people, behavior change is important, but what's even more important is emotional change. You can go online, right? Like if you want to work on coaching others, you can go to Google right now and it'll tell you 12.5 million different ways to coach others in about half a second. But that doesn't make us any better at doing it. The EC, the emotional change, is what makes a difference. Do you have the mindset? Do I have a belief? In fact, if I asked you right now, who's the person you look up to in your mind as the person who was the best coach you've ever had, sports coach, drama coach, music coach, parent, mentor? If you think about that person, we do this exercise in some of our training. You think about this person and you think about what made them a great coach. 80% of the answers I get are all about who they were, not what they did. Who they were, right? The EC, the emotional shift, that matters, that Powered by People piece. So I mentioned presence. I mentioned employee engagement, having this mindset of Powered by People. The fourth thing that we talk quite a bit about is handling stress and worry. I mentioned that 52% yesterday were under a significant amount of stress, and it hits us in a lot of ways. In fact, I was going to read a quote. So this is, so Dale Carnegie does not release a whole lot of books, but we just did this book called Take Command. It was a Wall Street Journal bestseller this summer by our CEO, Joe Hart. But he has a quote from Dale Carnegie that I liked, and I did not bring my reading glasses. Here we go. Dale Carnegie said this a long time ago. He said, "I now know with conviction beyond all doubt that the biggest problems you or I have to deal with, in fact, almost the only problems we have to deal with, is choosing the right thoughts. We can do that. We can be on the high road to solving all of our problems. The power of our thinking," Peter Drucker liked to say, the power of thinking makes a difference. So stress and worry becomes a huge deal. We were working with a car dealership, and their service manager, he was kind of reflecting on what he got out of some work that we did with him. And he said, "I'm sleeping better." Now, we're not cheap as an organization, and like the dealer is in the room and I'm like, "Oh, great. He's sleeping more." Like what's the dealer going to think about that? You're kind of thinking about this from a business continuity perspective. And so I asked the dealer, I said, "Well, what do you think about that? Jim's, he's sleeping more." And he said, "That's fantastic." He goes, "The difference that it makes when he's refreshed and he's focused in terms of working with customers, solving problems, the freshness of his brain, that makes way more for me than me driving him hard." There was a book called The Power of Full Engagement. and it talked about thinking about rest, thinking about stress. And they said there's two different types of athletes. There's the marathoners and the sprinters. The marathoners just go, 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 go. Sprinters stop and rest. And think about the physique of the Usain Bolts and the marathoners. Now, think about most business professionals. Who do they look more like? Probably more like the marathon, a little bit more haggard, because we have a tendency to think I must go, I must eat at my desk, I must continue to drive, I must put in the hours, that work ethic, which is fantastic. But what we find is we go faster, but we actually get less done than we were before. And so that power of rest, that power of sleep, it's really important for me. I was mentioning to the group, I just decided 6 months ago to take 4 weeks off. I called it a mini sabbatical. I figured after 28 years with Dale Carnegie, I'll take 4 weeks off. And after another 28, I'll do another 4 in a row. But at least for now, 4 weeks. And I was talking with some others that have done like a sabbatical time. And one was reflecting, he was saying to me, it was interesting when he got back into work, how much slower he was, like he walked slower. He thought deeper. He was more in the moment, present with people, wasn't edgy. And I experienced the same thing. And so my encouragement for you is, if you're finding that all this is important, then think about, what am I doing in terms of my own rest, my own refreshment, my own opportunity to get that stress down? Because then, I like to say it, there's two types of people in the world, people with ulcers and people who give ulcers. Hopefully we actually exit both those categories, right? We don't give those ulcers to other. The final thing I'll mention real quick here is culture. Peter Drucker long ago said that culture eats strategy for breakfast or lunch or some meal. I don't know what, but culture eats strategy. And I think when we think about what we're trying to get done as an organization, we have the right strategy, but without the culture, it's really hard. There's a great book that I'll recommend to you. It's called American Icon. It's by Bryce Hoffman. And it's about Alan Mulally, who saved Ford. He's actually the only person to save 2 Fortune 50 companies, Boeing and Ford. When he shows up at Ford in the early 2000s, Ford was in a mess. They had a lot of debt. They had actually collateralized for a loan the Ford logo to a Chinese organization. Like, that's how bad it was. If they had not pulled out, Ford would not be an American company anymore. And so Alan Mulally comes into Ford as the story plays out. And the number one thing he focuses on is culture. He called it his working together principles. How we work together matters. And that story is really about, he said, that's it. It's about how we work together. And he takes Ford from where they were to the point in 2008, 2009. They were the only domestic U.S. car manufacturer that did not take any money from the federal government. They didn't need it because it had turned around that much. That culture becomes such a critical aspect to it. I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, there was a book that came out by Ben Hardy called 10X is Easier Than 2X. That's another one I'll recommend for you. And he asks you to think about 10Xing your business versus trying to 2X your business. 2X is just working harder. 10X is thinking differently. And he asks you to reflect back as to when you've done it. And I've had the opportunity to 10X my business twice. I first showed up to Nashville in 2001. There wasn't much here, so the first 10X wasn't hard. It was a very low number. And then I had the opportunity to 10X it again. And I realized when I went back through that process of the most significant growth my business has undercome, it was not because of this great idea or this incredible thing that I did. It was all about who was around the table and me as a leader creating the culture that they could thrive. That's it. And the business starts to take out itself. So now we're focusing on trying to 10X another time. I've been a member of Rotary for 20 years downtown and had the opportunity to speak at a lot of Rotary clubs. And it's exciting to be here. And so just in summary, there's 5 things, right? It's presence, it's employee engagement, thinking about being powered by people, not technology. Just use the technology to make the people even more empowered. How we manage the stress and worry and the rest that we have. And then finally, all that comes together in the culture that we bring to the organization. So with that, I'm going to, you tell me, Drew, do we have time for Q&A or? Okay, I think I've got about 2 minutes for Q&A. Then Drew wants a few minutes to wrap up, and then you all leave the room whether I'm done or not. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And who would have the first question?
I'm curious. So I have 2 kids in school, a college kid and a 6th grader. And the whole ChatGPT thing is fascinating. And my first instinct as someone who really enjoyed reading and writing and, was a good student and was like, horrified that kids were going to use it to cheat. And then I took a deep breath and put down my readers and started thinking, trying to think bigger, and came to the idea that really we ought to figure out how it's a tool. Everybody ought to be using it.
Sure.
If everybody can write a C paper like that,
Mhm.
then everybody should start there
Mhm.
and then work on turning it into an A paper.
100%.
And a C paper ought to become an F, because obviously if anybody can, anyway. So I'm just curious what you are telling people, how to use that tool as a tool instead of as a obstacle.
Yeah, so last week, we got our first email in from somebody who obviously used ChatGPT to write the email on our team. Like, we had asked the question of one of our marketers and it came back and we were looking at it, we're like, this is so ChatGPT. I mean, you can just tell. And so it was funny though, that my leader who managed that individual, she like said, hey, did you just ChatGPT me? And he was like, yes. She's like, that's fine. You just it takes it 80% of the way. Take it the other 20. Right? Make it to where I don't know. That's all I ask, right? It's great. It's a tool to use to get your thinking, get your prospect going, but it takes it about 80% of the way. And then the human takes it the rest of the way. And so that's what we talk to our team about, is whatever we can do to let a computer do what computers do, and then humanize it. That's the right word. Humanize it. That's what we want people to do. Because then they're working in that creative space that the way our brains are designed. I mean, God designed that in such a beautiful way, that computer that's up in our brain. There's certain things we can do so great. Let's focus there and let the rest of it get done by chat or whatever the AI is that's in it. So nothing. Yes.
Just want to say thank you very much for the talks. Right, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've read a few books by Dale Carnegie, and just think I was really looking forward to you on the schedule today.
Thanks.
I kind of have two questions. One, just personally, like, I'd love to get involved, or like, I love just your whole cult, like everything you spoke about, what, people first and getting more out of people. From my own personal thing, like, how would I be able to get involved, either in a company, or do you have any personal training on that? And then the second question would be, what about the company I work with? I don't own the company, but I love to be a leader. And how I can, and just, I'd love to know any opportunity that would be.
Fantastic. So with 1 minute to go before y'all leave, I'm going to say, let's talk. Yeah, come on up. We'll exchange information and have that conversation. Like it was mentioned, our team is here in Nashville, East Tennessee, Atlanta, and Orlando. We've got quite a bit of people, both full-time trainers and people that work with businesses, just to try and help navigate those conversations. How do we rally people together, really focus on the business outcomes that we're looking for, and then how do we power the people to make that happen? So yeah, let's chat. All right. Thank you. Drew, back to you.
Before you get too far, Alan, one, thank you for that message. And as a recent graduate of Dale Carnegie session, I can tell you, Zach, it's worth every dollar of the experience that you get. And I had an incredible experience in my Dale Carnegie training. I do have a gift for you. Two things, actually, Alan. One, we have a gift for you that is a pen that you can take with you. Thank you, everybody. It's engraved with our club's name. And I did mention to Alan earlier that he is no longer a member of the Downtown Rotary Club, but we have a Rotary Club here. And that is a way for you to remember our club. And we would love for you to come back and join us anytime you would like. We also have a book that we would like for you to use that pen to sign. And we read this to first graders in the Brentwood community. And when we do, we talk about your time here. Love it. So thank you so much, Alan. Before we adjourn, I'd like to welcome our guests again, Jennifer, Owen, Bob. Owen and Bob, we look forward to not recognizing you as a guest, but recognizing you as a member. Jennifer, thank you for being here. It's great to have you. Remember, next week, wear your school colors. We have Coach Doug Matthews will be here to kick off the college football season. So wear your colors. I will have mine. But that will just be an Auburn golf shirt, just to be clear. There's nothing else that I will be wearing. Please help put away tables and chairs in stacks of 8 by the table. And if there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, then we are adjourned.